Hi everyone, I'm Evelyn and welcome to the channel. Firstly, I wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody who has liked, subscribed and viewed the videos over the last week. I am completely and utterly overwhelmed by the support, and you can probably tell by the smile on my face, which hasn't stopped all week, that I am incredibly grateful and full of gratitude. So thank you so much. So I'm here with Luna today. She might pop her head up at some point. Never too sure with Luna. She likes to live by her own rules, and why not? I think we all should. So today there we go, there she is. Hello Luna. Hi darling. Good girl. So today is the first real content for the channel, and I'm really excited to bring you the very first sewing tutorial on the channel. I'm getting clicked to death here. She's a beautiful dog. I love her. Oh, I just love you, don't I? Yeah, I love you too, yes. And it is something that I think we're all going to need here on the channel going forwards, because I'm not a particularly messy person, but because I suffer from ataxia, which tends to sort of give me the shakes, I do tend to make a little bit of mess now and then. And also, just a little hint for you, we've got quite a lot of messy fun coming up on the channel. I'm not going to give you any more hints than that because I'm terrible and I'll give it all away. So the first project I am going to share with you on the channel is going to be how to draft and create your very own vintage apron, so that when we're making things on the channel going forwards, we can create something that will protect our beautiful vintage clothes, which we're also going to be making in the future on this channel. So without further ado, as I always say, here goes nothing. Let's get on to the designing, drafting and making of our vintage apron. So when I begin a new project, I usually start by researching images that inspire me, and I collate these together and create a collage in one of my design books. And these usually have body forms in, so that I can create my design onto one of these body forms. And I love doing calligraphy and lettering, so I usually make the design look even better by incorporating that into my designs. So let's talk supplies. Firstly, you're going to need a pencil. This is the best thing to start drafting out your pattern, because you can rub out any errors or any problems that you come across. The second thing is going to be a marker pen. This is to trace out your pattern when it's finished and when it's all nice and perfect, so that it doesn't smudge off at any point. I'm going to be showing you how to make the pattern just using this today, just so that you can see easier. Then you're going to be needing a pair of scissors. Get into the habit now, especially if you are a beginner sewer, of having one pair of shears for your fabric and one for paper. It doesn't dull them too much, but from experience, it's just easier to have the two pairs for the different things. Then you're also going to need a measuring tape. We've only got a few measurements to take today, so it's a nice and easy beginner project. And these are really easy to come by as well. You can find them in local supermarkets usually. Then you're going to need a ruler. Now this is a proper dressmaking ruler. It's an 18" by 2" gridded ruler. Really helpful when making alterations to patterns and adding seam allowances and the like. And the last thing is some pattern paper. I absolutely love these rolls of brown parcel paper. Not only are they inexpensive, but they're usually recycled paper stock as well. So we're not only being nice and economical, we're being good to the planet as well. So let's get drafting. And today we only need these 4 measurements. So today we have Betty to help us get our measurements. Betty is my dress form. Of course she had to have a name. The first measurement we need is our waist. And I find it easier sometimes to tie a string around the smallest part of your waist just to see where that is and then get that measurement. The next measurement is apex, and that is between your nipples. So from one nipple to the other, that is your apex measurement. The third measurement is how long we want the bib of our apron to be. And to get that measurement, we are going to go across the fullest part of the bust from our waistline just up to where we want our bib to finish. And the final measurement for our beginner project today is how long we want the skirt portion of our apron, which is just taken from the waist down to the length required. So we begin drafting our waistband by drawing a long straight line along the bottom of our paper. Along that line we've just drawn, you are going to make a notch approximately in the centre of that line, which will become very important later on. From that centre notch, we are going to plot half our waist measurement to the right and half our waist measurement to the left, notching at both points. Now we're going to draw a straight line 2 inches above our original line, squaring up to that line from our notched waist points to create our waistband. And here I am just labelling this pattern piece so that we know what it is and we are able to make another apron in the future. To finish, we're just going to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance all around the piece, like so. To draft the bib of our apron, we are going to take our ruler and mark 1/2 of an inch above that centre notch on our waistband pattern, and this will form the lower seam allowance on our bib. From that notch that we've just made, we are going to take a straight line up, and the measurement for that straight line is going to be the desired length of our bib. Along the top of that line we have just created, we are going to plot half of our apex measurement to the left and half of our apex measurement to the right, extending each of those lines by 2 inches on either side to create the top of our bib pattern. So our waistband pattern piece is currently just the measurement of our waist, so it needs to be extended on either side for the apron's ties. So all I've done is I have marked the length of those ties, which is 12 inches, on my To complete this pattern piece, add a 1/2 inch seam allowance all around and add our labels. So our waistband pattern piece is currently just the measurement of our waist, so it needs to be extended on either side for the apron's ties. So all I've done is I have marked the length of those ties, which is 12 inches, on my waistband pattern piece, as you can see in the photo here, and I will simply extend the piece by those 12 inches on each side. Now I've also made a second mark that you can see which says straps, and I've simply marked that along that waistband pattern piece at 16 inches. So we can use the same pattern piece for our waistband and our straps, and we are going to cut 2 of these straps, which are 16 inches long, are now the same width as our waistband. Now I've also made some other notches on my waistband piece. I don't want my apron skirt to go all the way around my waist because this was a prominent feature of vintage aprons. And so what I've done is I have divided my waist measurement by 3, and then I have plotted 1/3 of my waist measurement to the right of our centre notch and 1/3 of my measurement to the left of our centre notch. And this is going to provide us with a notch showing us where we're going to place our skirt. Our apron skirt is really easy to draft. We are going to take that 1/3 waist measurement and times it by 4, and that is going to be the width of our skirt, and the length is simply going to be the length that we decided on in our measurements. This is a perfect project for any of your remnants, and I found these lovely cotton remnants in my stash. Incidentally, make sure you're keeping even the smallest scraps of fabric because we have a project to use them up coming up soon on the channel. I also managed to find some incredibly matching thread as well, which made me very happy. In terms of thread, my favourite is polyester thread. It is a great all-rounder for lots of different fabrics and lots of different stitches, and is great for hand and machine sewing. And this is one of my favourite brands, Coats Moon, and it comes in a wonderful variety of rainbow colours. Firstly, let's pin our pattern pieces to our fabric and get cutting out. Cut out 2 of our waistband pieces, remembering to extend them on either side by 12 inches for our ties. Cut out 2 straps, cut out 2 bibs. I have cut 1 from lining fabric and 1 from fashion fabric, and then cut out your skirt, transferring the skirt measurements we made earlier straight onto your fabric. Now, pinning and cutting out is something that takes me a long time because of my disabilities, and I feel like there's a couple of tips that could really help with something like this. Firstly, we just need to be more patient and kinder to ourselves. Some things are more difficult, so we just need to give ourselves a little bit more time. And secondly, this ties in with the first. Give yourself more time to do projects by putting things into 15-minute slots. This way, you're not getting yourself overtired, and it shows that you can achieve something in a very short amount of time. But basically, let's just be nicer to ourselves. Okay, so with all of my pattern pieces cut out, I think I actually do want a pocket. So I'm just going to draft one really quickly onto this piece of fabric. So if I use this already straight edge here as the top of my pocket, I think what I am going to do is literally a really cute U-shaped pocket. So all I'm going to do, I might as well use the majority of the fabric for less wastage. So I'm going to start at this corner and just create a really simple U-shaped pocket. And I'm bearing in mind that it's going to be smaller than this because I will have my seam allowance around this. And then what I will do is grab my marker and very carefully just mark out that new pattern piece that I've made. Starting with our straps, fold them lengthways, right sides together and pin all along the length. Then sew all along the length and along the bottom edge, leaving the top edge open. Then using your fabric scissors, trim the corners of the edge that you have sewn to allow you to get a nice even press and crisp edge when you turn the piece over, and give it a lovely press. Next, onto our bib and pocket. Pin the pieces right sides together. For the pocket, we are going to sew all around that U shape, leaving the top edge open. For the bib, we are simply going to sew all the way along the 2 sides, leaving both the top and bottom edges open. Moving over to our ironing board, let's talk about clipping and notching curves and pieces for a lovely crisp pressed edge. Now on a concave curve like this U shape on our pocket, if we take little notches of fabric out of the seam allowance like I'm doing here, it allows us to turn that piece really nicely and get a lovely crisp curve. Now on straight edges or concave curves like on the edge of our bib, if we just do little snips into the seam allowance, that will have the same effect and make our pressing look lovely and crisp and neat. So with our pocket and our bib nicely turned the right way out and nice and neatly pressed, what we're going to do is turn the top seam allowances inside and press them nicely as shown here. We're going to do that for the top of the pocket and the top of the bib. I then place my straps inside the nice pressed top edge of my bib just to work out where I want them to be placed, and then I'm just going to take a pencil and mark along that strap the point at which it joins the bib. Turning the bib piece inside out and unfolding the seam allowances, I'm then putting my straps inside the two layers of the bib. Now I'm simply going to line up that pencil mark I made on my strap with the seam allowance, pinning it in place. Now I am sewing all the way along the top of the bib, encasing the straps, and that is our bib portion of our apron finished. We simply now turn it inside the right way and give it a good press. Moving on to our skirt, what we are going to do is simply hem the bottom seam and the side seams, and because I have used pinking shears to cut out my fabric, I'm simply going to fold it over once and then stitch along those edges. If you haven't used pinking shears or you're worried that your particular fabric is going to fray, by all means fold it over twice and then stitch along that double fold. Next, we are going to use a long length of stitch on our machine and run 2 lines of parallel stitching along the top of our skirt piece. These stitches are called gathering stitches, and they are going to allow us to gather our skirt into our waistband. These stitches need to be within our seam allowance because we don't want them to show on our finished garment. To gather the fabric, all we need to do is take hold of the bobbin threads and pull lightly, using our other hand to push the fabric along the thread. When making gathering stitches, make sure to leave a long tail at the end of your stitching so that you have enough cotton to pull on and gather the stitches. Continue gathering until the top of your skirt fits in between the 2 placement notches that we created on our waistband by using 1/3 of our waist measurement to the left and 1/3 to the right. Take one of your waistband pieces and right sides together, pin it to your skirt, matching those notches to the edge of your skirt piece. Now we're going to stitch that one waistband to our skirt using a 1/4 inch seam allowance rather than our usual 1/2 inch. So now that that is all beautifully sewn, we are going to turn our skirt piece over, take our second waistband piece, and we're going to pop it on top of our first waistband piece, almost sandwiching the skirt in between the 2, so it's like a skirt sandwich. Then we're going to pin all the way around those 2 waistband pieces as far as we can, right up to the edge of the skirt. And you'll see that actually my waistband pieces are actually made of more than one length of fabric because I didn't have enough to create one continuous length. And you can do that by all means, just remember to keep adding seam allowances so that your pieces aren't too short. over to our machine, we are going to stitch all the way around those pinned edges, stitching at our regular 1/2 inch seam allowance. This will mean that the previous stitching we did at 1/4 inch to stitch the first waistband on will now be concealed in our new stitching and won't show from the front. Turning our newly sewn waistband and ties to the correct side, we are now ready to insert our bib into our apron. To do this, firstly we are going to fold the remaining seam allowances on our waistband piece to the inside. We are then going to match the centre of the bottom of our bib to the centre front notch on our waistband. This in place, going through both layers of waistband and the bib. Top stitch on your machine all along this pinned edge, closing any remaining raw edges on your waistband and adding in your bib. The last thing we need to do to finish our aprons is to install our pocket. Firstly, you're going to close that raw top edge by top stitching across the top of the pocket. Take your pocket and place it on your skirt wherever you would like. Pin all the way around your pocket to stabilise it. Then take your pocket over to the machine and top stitch all around the U shape on your pocket. And guess what? Here comes the reveal. Enjoyed creating your very own vintage apron with Luna and I this week. I'm going to be uploading new content every Friday at midnight GMT. You say hi too? Yeah? Gorgeous, go. And there are lots of ways that you could adapt your apron to be different for you. For example, you could put more than one pocket on. You could put no pockets at all. You could even create different tiers of skirt to make your apron look even more vintage and even more fabulous. And if that's something that you're interested in, let me know in the comments below. But until next week, goodbye.